Right. Chapter 1, Quarantine. Snap! The thick red ribbon broke, its two ends fluttering down to rest on the ground in front of Medicam's main doorway. The petite blonde woman who had cut the ribbon smiled and waved to the cheering crowd in front of the state-of-the-art building. Medicam's new headquarters had been designed by world-famous architects and fitted out with the latest laboratory technology money could buy. And Maris Wheeler knew it was all a sham. The new building, the company's move to Roswell, New Mexico. It was all a big show she was putting on to hide the real reason she was here. She was here to find one person, a person who lived in Roswell and who possessed extraordinary powers. The one person in all the world who would be able to heal her dying husband, Clayton Wheeler III. And today, at last, Maris would lay her trap for the healer. Thank you, Maris cried over the cheering. Half the city of Roswell seemed to be here for the Medicam ribbon cutting. And why not? The giant pharmaceutical company was prepared to offer hundreds of new jobs to the community, everything from business managers to research assistants to janitors. Roswell loved Medicam, and Mars would see to it that the feeling continued for as long as she needed it to. You're certainly making us feel welcome in our new home, Maris continued as the clapping quieted. Now, as you know, Medicam is committed to giving back to the community, and we're going to begin that process today by announcing the winner of our new college scholarship program. We've chosen one Roswell High student to become a research assistant here at Medicam. This student will not only receive the invaluable experience of working with our world-class scientists, but he or she will also receive a scholarship of $10,000 towards a college of his or her choice. Got your thank you speech ready? Maria DeLuca teased, nudging her best friend. Liz Parker smiled nervously. She glanced at the beaming faces around her, her parents, Maria, and her mom, and Max Evans. Liz knew they were all expecting her to win this scholarship. And 2 years ago, she would have felt completely confident that she would. But her grades had slowly been slipping ever since she'd become involved with Max and his family of aliens. His sister, Isabel, his best friend, Michael Guerin, and of course, his ex-girlfriend, Tess Harding. The truth was, there was more important things on Liz's plate these days than winning scholarships. When she'd started high school, all she'd wanted was to excel in school, to continue her studies in science, and to get into Harvard University for dream college. But now she just wanted to get through senior year without a major global crisis. Our scholarship student will be working with the director of research here at Medicam, Maris Wheeler was saying from the front of the crowd. So I'll let him be the one to announce the winner. Please welcome Dr. Alan Sosa. There was polite applause as Dr. Sosa, a wiry man in his 50s, made his way to the podium where Maris stood. Liz shifted her weight uncomfortably. Her father had insisted that they get to the ceremony early enough to find a place in the front, so she'd be able to get to the podium easily when her name was called. Liz didn't have the heart to tell him that she wasn't expecting to win. Jeff Parker had kept an eye on Liz's grades when she was younger, but it had been years since he felt the need to look over her report cards. Liz herself had always cared about her straight A's enough for both of them. Right now, Jeff was beaming at her proudly. Liz shuffled her feet and tried to stay calm. Dr. Sosa was talking now, but Liz couldn't seem to follow his words. She didn't want to be here. So what if she used to be into science? She'd grown up, changed her mind about what was important to her. The problem was she wasn't sure what she had changed her mind to. There was always some kind of alien crisis to take up her time, so she'd stopped thinking about herself, her own needs. She mostly just thought about Max's needs. As if he could feel that she was thinking of him, Max put his hand on the small of her back. Immediately, Liz felt calmer. Max was always a grounding force for her. He leaned over and spoke softly in her ear. Take a deep breath, Liz, Max murmured. Whether you win or not, you'll still be the most important thing to me. Liz sighed. If only that were true, but she knew that Max's life was full of things and people that were more important than she was. And on top of the list was his son, the baby he was having with Tess. Tess, still pregnant, had killed her friend Alex and then had left the planet. And even light years away, she was still more important than Liz, because as long as she had Max's son, Max would never be able to give up searching for them. He would never be able to put Liz first. So let's cut to the chase, Dr. Sosa's words broke into Liz's thoughts. The winner of the first Medicam Work Scholarship and my new assistant is Miss Elizabeth Parker. Maria shrieked and threw her arms around Liz. I knew it, she cried. I swear, I read my tea leaves last night, and they told me you were going to win. Maria's mother, Amy, pried her daughter off of Liz. I think maybe Liz's parents will want some hug time, too, she remarked. Nancy Parker held Liz tight, pressing her lips to Liz's forehead. Then Jeff gave her an affectionate push towards the podium. You better get up there before they give their job to someone else, he joked. Shocked at winning, Liz managed to walk over to where Dr. Sosa was standing. She shook hands with him and accepted a congratulatory kiss from Maris Wheeler, all the while wondering how she pulled this off. Josh Faber from her AP biology class was going to have coronary. He'd been beating her grades for a year now. Thanks, Liz said into the microphone at the podium. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to start working with Dr. Sosa. As she spoke, her gaze fell upon Max. He was watching her adorningly, but she knew he would leave her in a moment if he had a chance to find a son. He can't put me first, Liz thought sadly, so maybe it's time I put myself first. I wanted to be a biologist since I was a little girl, Liz went on, and right now I feel more committed to that goal than I have in a long time. She took a deep breath. This new job is my number one priority. Michael sighed happily and gazed through the order window at Crashdown Cafe. There was two old men having coffee at the counter and a family of tourists at one of the booths. No Liz, no Maria, no Jeff Parker. Michael was in charge, and he liked it that way. He made his way out of the kitchen and jumped over the counter, which was strictly forbidden when the boss was here. With a self-satisfied grin, he grabbed a pot of coffee off the burner and headed for the two men. Hey, old-timer, more coffee? You bet, the gray-haired man answered. The wife won't let me drink it at home. She's got me on that decaf crap. That's not right, Michael commiserated while filling the guy's mug. These damn women, put in the other old man, pushing his mug forward to be filled. Why do you think they can run our lives for us? We do just fine on our own, Michael agreed. All they do is make sure we never have any fun. The two old guys growled in agreement. Well, not me, Michael went on. I am not going to let a woman tell me what to do. I'll drink to that, the gray-haired guy said. Michael grinned as the two old men sipped their coffee in his honor. This was the life. Just a bunch of guys hanging together. He leaned against the back counter and pulled a Motor Trend magazine from his jeans pocket. Michael, a familiar screech broke into his quiet moment. Maria burst through the front door, as long blonde hair flying behind her. Why didn't you call me last night? She demanded as she stopped across the restaurant. And clean up that coffee spill. Michael froze like a deer in the headlights. He glanced down at the counter, and sure enough, there was a ring-shaped coffee stain drying on the formica. He looked up and met the amused gaze of the two old men. He would totally lose face if he didn't stand up to Maria. Cleaning isn't in my job description, he said. He forced himself to begin reading his magazine again. There was a moment of silence. Michael grimaced. Silence was bad. With Maria, silence was a very, very bad thing. Bad sign. He peeked over the top of the Motor Trend, expecting to see two furious brown eyes boring into his own. But Marie was gone. Baffled, Michael stuffed the magazine back in his pocket and glanced around the restaurant. She went in the back, one of the old men told him, and I think you're in trouble. With a sigh, Michael went around the corner, lifting up the end this time to walk through instead of jumping over, and pushed open the swinging door to the back room. If his girlfriend was too mad to even talk to him in public, he really was in trouble. Baby, I'm sorry I didn't call. Michael stopped, shocked. Marie was curled up in a ball on the couch in the corner. She seemed frightened. What? Did something happen? Michael asked, instantly on alert. Maria nodded, her eyes wide. Well, what is it? He demanded. An alien crisis? Something with the police? What? It's my mother, Marie whispered. I'm hiding from her. Michael rolled his eyes. This was Maria's idea of a crisis. The two DeLuca women spent most of their time bickering, as far as he could tell. What did you do, dent the Jetta again? He asked. The door behind him swung open, revealing Amy DeLuca. There you are! How dare you storm out on me, young lady! She cried. Michael took a step back. Maria had clearly inherited her shrill voice from her mom. Maria leapt up from the couch and faced off with Amy. I had to get to work, Mom, remember? What did you call it? My dead-end job that will never prepare you for any sort of real life? Your shift doesn't start for another 15 minutes, Amy shot back. So I expect you to finish the conversation we were having instead of running away like a 5-year-old. You were the one having a conversation, Mom. I was there to be abused, Maria said. I gotta get back to work, Michael mumbled. He retreated to the kitchen, but since it was only 10 feet away, it wasn't enough to block out the sounds of the argument. Michael knew the fight would come around to him sooner or later. It always did. He knew Amy liked him, but she didn't exactly approve of his relationship with Maria. I'm not abusing you, Maria. I'm just concerned about your future, Amy was saying. Watching Liz win that scholarship today got me thinking. I'm not Liz, Maria snapped. I'm not about to win any science prizes. I know that, Amy said, but Liz is getting ready for life after high school. She's getting good work experience, starting to earn money for college. What are you doing? I do earn money, Maria shrieked. I've had a job since I was 14. Michael wondered if the customers could hear them fighting. He snuck a look through the order window. Yep, they could hear. The two old men were listening attentively while the tourist family looked nervous. You earn money, and then you spend it on Michael, Amy said. I knew it, Michael muttered. It always ends up being my fault. It's my money, Maria told her mother. I can spend it however I want. That means I'll be getting a lecture from Maria later about how she can't keep paying for dinner all the time, Michael thought. Look, honey, in a few months you'll be a senior, Amy said, putting on a calm voice. I'm not saying you can't still goof off and have fun. I'm just saying that you have to start thinking about life after high school. If you're not careful, you'll end up a waitress in Roswell for the rest of your life. Not everybody wants to go to Harvard and become a biochemical whatever scientist like Liz, Maria said. Maybe I want to stay in Roswell and work. Michael sighed. The last thing Maria wanted to do was stay in Roswell. He would have to hear about that later, too. Great, fine, Amy cried, throwing up her hands. Stay in Roswell. Marry Michael. Get yourself pregnant. Throw your life away, just like I did. Ooh, not good, Michael whispered. Maria grabbed her backpack up off the couch. I'm so happy to know that you consider marrying Dad and having me to be throwing your life away, she said coldly. And then she turned her back on Amy, walked into the bathroom, and closed the door. Michael shook her head. Usually he was jealous of his friends, who, unlike him, all had parents. But on days like today, he felt like the lucky one. How about dinner and senior chows tonight to celebrate your scholarship? Max asked. He and Liz sat at one of the booths in the crashdown just as the lunch rush started. Jeff Parker had given Liz the day off in honor of her big win. Liz was quiet for a moment, twirling a strand of her dark hair around her finger. Just the two of us having a nice romantic dinner? Prodded. I don't think so, Liz finally answered. I start at Medichem tomorrow, so I want to get plenty of sleep tonight. She glanced up at him and smiled. Don't want to be yawning in my first day on the job. Max nodded, disappointed. Liz might be smiling, but her heart wasn't in it. He couldn't read her mind, but he was pretty good at reading her emotions. And for the past few days, she hadn't been happy. The worst part was that it was his fault. He knew his romance with Tess had hurt Liz's feelings, but after all, Liz was the one who had told him that he belonged with Tess. For months, Liz had even let him believe that she had sex with Kyle Valenti. Then after Tess left the planet, Max had decided that it was time to start over with life here on Earth, start over with Liz. Last week, he planned a first date for them, and it was supposed to be the perfect evening. He knew the love he shared with Liz was strong enough to overcome the trust issues between them. But on their date, it had gone all wrong. While he was swimming in the lake, he'd gotten a mental flash, a vision of his son with Tess. It seemed as if his son was calling out to him. At that moment, he knew he couldn't really start over. He could never rest until he found his son and rescued him from Tess. Hey, Brainiac, Kyle's voice broke into Max's thoughts. He turned to see Kyle entering the crashdown along with Isabel. Kyle headed straight for their booth to give Liz a hug. Congratulations on the scholarship, he said, kissing the top of her head. Max couldn't help feeling jealous of Kyle, even now. Liz had told him she didn't sleep with Kyle, but she never explained why Kyle had been in her bed all those months ago. Max had seen them together there, and he still couldn't get the image of it out of his mind. Thanks, Liz beamed up at Kyle. I can't believe I really won it. It's been so long since I even cracked a book. Kyle sat down next to Liz while Isabel slid into the booth next to Max. She grabbed one of his french fries and dipped it into the puddle of Tabasco sauce on his plate and popped it into her mouth. I can't believe you're so excited about getting a full-time job, Isabel commented. I mean, the money for college is great, but face it, for this summer, you're slave labor in the Medichem labs. But it's an amazing experience, Liz pointed out. Isabel's right, though, Max said. It's a full-time job. Plus, you'll still have shifts here at the crashdown. When are you ever going to have time for anything but work? When are you going to have time for me? He added silently. Before Liz could answer, Kyle jumped in. Well, I'll be right there with you, he told Liz. Literally, I got a job at Medichem, too. No way, Liz cried. That's great. Not so great, Kyle said. You'll be working in the lab. I'll be cleaning the lab. I'm a janitor. So what? Isabel said. A job's a job. Yeah, well, I still have to put in time at Toby's garage, too. At least until my dad finds some work. Silence fell over the table. Max felt responsible for the fact that Kyle's father had lost his job as the sheriff of Roswell. He knew Isabel did, too. If Valenti hadn't spent so much time trying to help the aliens, he wouldn't have been suspended, and Kyle wouldn't have to work 2 jobs trying to support them. Kyle, Isabel began, reaching across the table to take Kyle's hand. It's fine, Kyle said shortly. He glanced up at Isabel's sympathetic face and forced a smile. Really, at least I'll have Parker for company. Right, Liz said. Too bad I won't, Max thought miserably. I am calm. I am collected. I am in control. Maria stared at her reflection in the mirror over the bathroom sink. Through the door, she heard the usual symphony of noises from the crashdown. She was so not in the mood to work today. She took a deep breath and smothered herself in the mirror. I am calm, I am collected, I am in control, she insisted to her reflection. A loud knock sounded on the door. Yo, Maria, get out here, Michael bellowed. With a sigh, she pulled open the door and faced her boyfriend. What? She said. I need help, Michael told her. You know I can't deal with customers bitching. And you think I'm in any shape to handle a confrontation? Marie demanded. Didn't you hear what my mother said to me before? All I want to do is avoid any more arguing today. I know, baby, he said, kissing her quickly. I just thought you might want to take out some of your aggression on this customer. And besides, I don't know what to do with her. She's at the counter. Michael fled back into the kitchen. Maria rolled her eyes. She grabbed her antenna headband and forced it over her hair, wincing at how tight it was. Then with one final calming breath, she headed out into the dining room. Michael really wasn't any good at dealing with complaints. This is probably that same little old lady she got into a yelling match with last week. Marie stopped short when she saw the counter. There was only one person sitting there, and it was a little girl. You've got to be kidding me, she muttered. Then she pasted a smile on her face and walked over to the girl. As she got closer, she noticed that the girl wasn't as young as she thought. She was probably around 11, even though she was tiny enough to pass for a 9-year-old. Hi, is there a problem with your food? Maria asked. The girl spun around on her stool and stared at Maria. Her light brown eyes were wide and her mouth hung slightly open as if she were surprised. She didn't say anything. Maria watched her for a moment, then tried again. Hi, did you have a complaint? Oh my God, the girl said in a rush. Are you Maria? Yeah, Maria answered. Why? The girl kept staring at her, almost as if she was studying Maria's face. Your hair is long, she said. Now Maria was starting to get freaked out. Who was this kid? Yeah, well, Marie wasn't sure what else to say. She pushed her hair behind her ear. The girl pushed a lock of her own shoulder-length blonde hair behind her ear. Do I know you? Maria asked. The girl smiled wildly. Nope, she chirped, but I think you are the coolest girl ever. Suddenly her hand shot out and grabbed Maria's wrist. She stared at Maria's nails and proudly held up her own hand. We have the same nail polish, she shrieked happily. Maria winced. Mm-hmm, she agreed, pulling her hand away. We sure do. So listen, Sadie, Maria repeated. Well, listen, Sadie, I have other customers to wait on, so was there something you needed? Sadie shook her head, still grinning at Maria. Didn't you tell Michael, the cook, that you have a complaint? Maria asked. Sadie finally seemed to snap out of her Maria-induced trance. Oh yeah, she said, I asked for a banana split, and he said there was no bananas, so I said he can make me a banana split, hold the bananas, but he said there's no such thing as that, because if there are no bananas, then how can it be a split? Gotcha, Maria interrupted. You want a sundae and a banana boat. Yeah, Sadie cried. See, you totally get it. You and I must think exactly alike. Whatever, Maria muttered, turning away. This girl was starting to get on her nerves. It was nice to be hero worshipped and all, but Maria just wasn't in the mood today. Maria, Sadie called after her. What? Maria asked without turning around. Can I wear one of your antenna headbands like yours? Maria couldn't help smiling. Maybe her day was starting to look up. She snatched the too tight headband off and spun back towards Sadie. Tell you what, you can have mine, she said, plopping it on the girl's head, and you don't even have to give it back. Liz pushed through the swinging door into the back room. Maria sprawled on the couch, taking a break from her shift. She took one look at Liz's face and held out her arms. Come to Mama, she said. Liz threw herself on the couch next to her best friend. I had to get away from Max, she told Maria. Why? Maria asked. Because he's all mopey about my new job at Medichem, Liz said. He thinks it will send me from spending any time with him, so he resents it. He said that? Liz sighed. Max would never say anything unsupportive, but you could tell what he was thinking. No, but he doesn't have to say it. He's right. Maria frowned in confusion. About what? About Medichem, Liz replied. This job will take up all my time, so I won't be able to see him. Maria studied her for a moment. You don't sound upset about that, she said. I'm thinking you want the time away from Max, am I right? Liz nodded miserably. She loved Max more than anything, but it was just too hard to be with him. I need some space to think, you know? I need to figure out whether I should start dating Max again. I thought you'd already made that decision, Maria said. We all assumed you two were back on again. We were, Liz said. I mean, we had that one date, and then Max went all freaky alien on you and started obsessing over her son, Maria finished for her. So we're back to the King Max and Queen Tess issue. Liz sighed. Max told me he wanted to start over, that he wanted to forget about Tess. But now that he knows his son has been born, he feels he has to go after him. It's his number one priority. You think he should put you first? Maria asked. No, of course not, Liz protested. Max is a child out there, and he's in danger. He wouldn't be the Max I love if he didn't put his child's welfare above everything else. But, Maria prompted, but I don't know if I want to be with someone who can't make me his highest priority, Liz admitted. I love Max, but that doesn't mean it's healthy for me to be with him. Liz put her head on Maria's shoulder, and the two girls sat in silence for a moment. So what are you going to do? Maria finally asked. I was thinking today that maybe I need to find my own life, Liz said slowly. One that's about what I want, and not about some guy and his needs. Sounds like a plan, Maria said. Liz sat up straight. It is a plan. From now on, I'm going to concentrate on my new job and my goals for the future. And the Max thing will just have to work itself out. She met Maria's gaze. Her best friend was smirking at her. What? Liz demanded. Your plan is to hide at Medicam so Max can't find you and make you all swoony. Liz stood up and tossed her hair defiantly over her shoulder. Exactly. Nothing bad can happen if I'm stuck in the lab all day. That's chapter 1.
Chapter 2. Are you ready for Liz Parker to start? Maris Wheeler asked. Dr. Alan Sosa was pacing around the office, looking agitated. I still don't see why she has to work here. We already have everything we need from this girl. She was the first one healed by the healer, Maris said. The guy literally repaired her. At least that's the theory. So I'm thinking she must know something about him. Maris, you already have the waitress uniform with Liz Parker's blood on it. That's the most important thing. She'll be able to contribute to your search for the healer. Maris regarded him coldly. The name is Miss Wheeler, she reminded him. He threw up his hands. Fine, Miss Wheeler. I respectfully suggested we're putting ourselves at risk bringing this girl into Medicam. I never realized you were such a coward, Alan, Maris remarked. I'm simply trying to hedge my bets. If she knows who the healer is, maybe we can find out from her, and if not, we can use her as a guinea pig. Alan stopped pacing. What? He said. I want you to test your serum on her, Maris informed him. She'll be in your lab every day, so you'll be able to monitor what effect it has on her. That's crazy, Alan said. We haven't even tested on actual guinea pigs. We don't even know what it's made from. It's made from the healer's DNA, Maris said. DNA taken from the corrupted cells found on 2-year-old fibers lifted from a waitress uniform. Alan said disgustedly. You have no idea where that DNA came from. Don't be so dismissive, Alan, Maris snapped. It took millions of dollars and not a few criminal misdeeds to get that waitress uniform from the FBI. It's the only physical evidence we have of the healer. Alan frowned. You don't know for sure that it's the healer's DNA. It's unrecognizable DNA, Maris said. We don't know what the healer is. An alien, an angel, I don't care. But he doesn't have the same genes that we do. Even if what you're saying is true, we don't know that his healing power has anything to do with his DNA, Alan protested. We have no reason to think that turning his DNA into some sort of serum will have any healing properties at all. Maris took a deep breath. Why did Dr. Sosa have to be so difficult? He was a brilliant genetic scientist, but not much of a strategic thinker. Look, Alan, my husband is getting older and sicker by the day. I have to face the fact that I may not find the healer in time to save him, so I have to have a plan B. The serum, Alan said miserably. Exactly. You were kind enough to turn the healer's DNA into a serum for me, and now you're going to be kind enough to test it on Miss Parker. You have money for lunch in the cafeteria, right? Liz stared at her father, trying to keep a straight face. Yeah, she said. And you'll call me when you want to come home, Jeff Parker had. Now Liz did laugh. Yes, Dad, she said. It's not the first day of kindergarten, it's just a new job. Jeff nodded. I know, but it's so important. This is the first step to the career you've always wanted. This job could land you an acceptance to any college you want next year. Liz kissed him on the cheek and opened the car door. She didn't want to think about next year, about leaving Roswell and Max. Bye, Dad, she said, climbing out and shutting the door behind her. Good luck, honey, Jeff replied. Liz looked at him through the car window. He just kept grinning at her. He's going to wait until I'm safely inside, Liz thought, amused. Her father was treating her like some fragile China doll. If he only knew the things that she'd been through in the past 2 years, he'd realize she could take care of herself just fine. With a wave, she turned and headed into the new building. Medicam even smelled new. The halls were bare, the floors waxed and shiny under the soft fluorescent lights. About 20 feet away, some moving guys were unloading boxes of lab equipment in front of a thick steel door. A few of the boxes were labeled hazardous. Liz wasn't sure what to do. No one had told her where to report, and other than the moving guys, no one was in the sight. Taking a deep breath, she headed towards the moving cart. Excuse me, Liz called. One of the guys, a short man, but solidly built, turned at the sound of her voice. In the process, he banged the box again in his arms against the wall. From inside came the unmistakable ground of breaking glass. Liz winced. Sorry, she said. I just... What's going on out there? Cried an agitated voice from inside the lab. The moving man took a step back, and a man in a lab coat appeared in the doorway. Liz recognized him immediately. It was Dr. Alan Sosa. You realize these are extremely delicate materials, Dr. Sosa moaned. You may have just undone months of work. I'm sorry, the movie guy mumbled. It's my fault, Liz said quickly. I'm sorry, Dr. Sosa. I didn't know where to go. So I was about to ask this man. I distracted him. Dr. Sosa glanced at Liz, then sighed, Miss Parker, starting off your tenure here rather badly, aren't you? He turned and disappeared back inside the lab, leaving Liz horrified. She couldn't believe she'd made a bad impression already, and she couldn't believe how rude he'd just been to her. The moving guy shot her a sympathetic smile as she squeezed past him into the lab. Dr. Sosa seemed to have forgotten about her already. He was busy arranging a complicated system of test tubes and jars on a lab table. Liz waited quietly just inside, not wanting to risk his anger by interrupting his work. After about 2 minutes, though, she felt she had no choice. Dr. Sosa, she was dismayed to find her voice little more than a squeak. What? He said, without turning around. I was wondering what I should be doing, Liz said. Can I help you with anything? Dr. Sosa whirled about so quickly that Liz jumped back in surprise. His graying hair was too long and flopped when he moved, making him look like a mad scientist. He stared at Liz in silence, his eyes boring into hers as if he was trying to read her mind. Why do you want to work here instead of lying by the pool all summer? He asked in a low voice. Liz, taken aback, could think of nothing to say. You're young, you're free. Why don't you just leave right now? He went on. Liz felt awful. Did he think she was unqualified for this job? He seemed to believe she was some bubblehead with nothing on her mind but getting a tan. Or maybe he'd checked over her grades lately. Maybe he'd realized the wrong student had gotten this work scholarship. Liz opened her mouth to speak, but another voice cut her off. Liz! Maris Wheeler floated into the room. She was wearing a gorgeous business suit, and Liz smelled expensive perfume. She immediately gave Liz a warm smile and a little hug. Welcome to Medicam. Liz forced a smile. Hi, Miss Wheeler. Maris, please. Maris, Liz corrected herself. She didn't really know what to make of Maris Wheeler. The woman was beautiful, and she seemed to belong in a mansion somewhere, not running a pharmaceutical company. But her steely blue eyes held a great intelligence. Maris turned to Dr. Sosa. Good morning, Alan, she said. Are you helping Liz get settled in? His eyes shot down to the floor, and his cheeks turned white. He didn't reply. There was a strange, awkward pause. Finally, Liz consented. I just got here, she said. We haven't really had time to settle in. Maris nodded. Well, I'll give you the overview while I'm here. Obviously, I'm no scientist like Dr. Sosa, so he'll have to fill in the details once you get to work. Liz glanced at Dr. Sosa. He had turned his back to them, and his shoulders were hunched up as if he was stressed. There was something weird going on here. Dr. Sosa is doing some very important work for us, Maris was saying. He's a cancer researcher, as I'm sure you know. Yes, Liz said. Most cancer treatments are designed to deal with the cancer once it occurs. But here in Medicam, we're working on a treatment that will attack cancer at its source. Maris said, cancer, of course, is a mutation. Right, Liz said. Regular cells mutate into cancer cells. Exactly, and what we want to do is prevent a mutation from ever occurring. Liz frowned in confusion. How is that possible? We don't know what causes the mutation. True, but we do a lot of work with DNA here. Our goal is to make human DNA resistant to mutation, strengthen the resistance, protect the DNA, and the cancer never happens. Liz knew this conversation was oversimplifying things, but she couldn't help thinking it all sounded like a pipe dream. But if you make human DNA resistant to mutations, it could also be harmful, she pointed out. Some mutations are good. Evolution is a history of mutations. Of course, we're trying to isolate specific genes that are most likely to lead to the growth of cancer cells. Maris said. Isn't it dangerous, though? Liz asked. I mean, once we started messing with people's DNA, who knows where it could lead? That's exactly right, Miss Parker, Dr. Sosa said. It was the first thing he'd said since Maris had arrived, and Liz was almost surprised to hear his voice. Maris smiled at Dr. Sosa, but her smile was a little forced. There are ethical issues to any gene therapy, she admitted coldly, but we at Medicam feel we know where the line is, and we'd like to eradicate cancer. Now I've insulted her, Liz thought. What a terrible beginning. That's really impressive, she said aloud. I had no idea you were working on such humanitarian things. We produce pharmaceuticals only to make money for our more our more important research, Mayer said. That's what Medicam is all about. Helping people, healing people. Dr. Sosa coughed, and Mayer shot him an aggravated look. I guess Dr. Sosa doesn't buy the Medicam sales pitch, Liz thought, amused. It's as if this job would be an education in office politics as well as science. I wanted you to be in the lab where our most interesting work is being done, Maris told Liz. That's why I've placed you with Dr. Sosa. I'll leave you two to get started. Maris headed for the door, then stopped and turned back to Liz. I'm really happy to have you here, Liz. We both are. Right, Alan? Dr. Sosa met Maris's eye and then forced a smile. Sure, he said. The minute Maris was out of the room, his smile disappeared. Liz could figure it out. He obviously, he obviously wasn't happy to have her here, but why? I'm really excited to be involved with such cutting-edge research, she said. What do you want me to do? See that box, he said, pointing to one of the crates the movers had left. Liz nodded. You'll find about 500 petri dishes inside. I want you to wash every one of them. Liz gaped at him. Washing dishes. That was her fantastic new job. She could do that at a crash down. Just wash them? Dr. Sosa rolled his eyes. Do you think you'd be splicing jeans for your summer job? He asked. Liz felt tears stinging the back of her eyes. This guy was a jerk. This guy was a jerk. I'll get to work, she murmured. Isabel stuck another grape into her mouth and sighed. Are we really watching General Hospital? She asked her brother, who sat next to her on the couch. Max continued to stare at the TV because I kind of had the impression that you'd rather be tortured in the White Room than watch a soap opera, she went on. Max didn't answer. He just stared straight ahead, chewing thoughtfully on his lip. If he didn't get bored and leave, Isabel was going to have to take matters into her own hands. She needed him out of earshot before her new boyfriend, Jesse Ramirez, called. In fact, I thought soap operas gave you the hives, she added. No answer. Isabel pointed her finger at Max and used her powers to shoot a tiny zap of electricity at his cheek. Ow, he yelped, jumping in surprise. He glared at Isabel, then picked up the remote. Just for that, I'm not letting you watch General Hospital, he said, changing his channel. Isabel snorted. You've been here for 15 minutes brooding and moping, she said, and totally not paying attention to what's in front of your face. What's going on? Nothing. Oh, please, Max, don't make me resort to dreamwalking. You can't dreamwalk me, Max said. Don't be so sure. They sat in silence for another minute, now watching an infomercial on TV. If Max hated anything more than soap operas, it was infomercials. It's Liz, he said suddenly. Well, duh, Isabel replied. What happened now? I think she took that job at Medicam just to get away from me. Max, Liz won the job in a scholarship contest, Isabel pointed out. It could have been some premeditated way to avoid you. It couldn't have been some premeditated way to avoid you. I guess not, but I'm afraid she's having doubts about us, Max said despairingly. He clicked off the TV and turned his big, sad eyes on Isabel. Great, she thought. Now I'll never get rid of him before Jesse calls. It wasn't that she didn't care about Max's problem, but she wanted to talk to Jesse in private, and she could not let Max find out about him. Her relationship with Jesse was still so new, and she was sure Max wouldn't approve. In fact, he might disapprove so much that he would tell their parents about it, and that would be a disaster. First of all, Jesse was older, 8 years older, and second of all, he worked for Isabel's father. No, there was no way she could let her parents find out about Jesse. Once upon a time, she would have trusted her brother with this kind of secret. Once upon a time, he was her best friend. But Max had changed over the past year. Learning about their alien destiny had been a shock to all of them. But Max had taken it the hardest, because Max was the king. A king whose responsibility it was to save a planet he'd never ever seen, and whose destiny was to love a girl he barely even knew. Somehow in the middle of all that, he lost track of who he was. He managed to alienate all his friends. About 2 months ago, he'd done the worst thing Isabel could think of. He turned on her. He took his role of king so seriously that he thought he could make decisions for all of them. He decided he didn't want Isabel leaving Roswell to go to college, and he threatened to do whatever it took to make her obey him, even if that meant lying to her parents, telling them Isabel was on drugs. Max had apologized later. He'd forgiven him, but Isabel wasn't sure she could ever trust her brother again, and Jessie was too important to her to give up. If Max didn't want her to be want her with Jessie, he might try again to tell her what to do, maybe even threaten her again. So she just had to keep Max from finding out. Isabel didn't feel like talking about Max's trouble with Liz. Those two were never happy, and there was nothing anyone could do to help. Max, you and Liz are interplanetary. You and Liz are the interplanetary Romeo and Juliet. She's disgustingly in love with you, Isabel said. She got really upset after I had that flash of my son, Max told her. Isabel sighed. Clearly, she was going to have to help Max through this, even if it meant missing her call from Jessie. Well, you did sleep with Tess and get her pregnant, Isabel said. And Tess killed Alex and lied to all of us. So it's sort of understandable that Liz would get upset when you have psychic flashes from Tess. The flash came from the baby, Max corrected her. Isabel put her hand over his. You can't know that for sure, she said gently. You don't know anything about the baby. And you have to admit, if the situation were reversed, you'd be freaked out too. Max nodded sadly. What am I supposed to do about it? He asked. All I want is for life to go back to normal. Newsflash, Max. Life never was normal. Max smiled wanly. You know what I mean. Before we knew about Antar and being the Royal Four. Before Tess? He shrugged. But there's nothing I can do about it now. I can't escape the responsibility. I'm the king, and he's my son, Isabel. I have to find him no matter what, don't I? Isabel thought about it, Max's son, her own nephew. It all seemed so true, so remote, so unreal. Tess was gone, and she'd taken with her the only way to get back to their home planet Antar. They were stuck on Earth now with no means of fulfilling their duty to save Antar from its current evil rulers. It seemed as if fate had taken it out of their hands. I don't know, Max, Isabel said slowly. I don't know if it's even possible to find your son. I think maybe it's time to admit that our lives are going to be here on Earth. I tried that, he replied. And as soon as I started rebuilding my life here, I got that flash from my son. He's telling me that I can't give up, even if it means sacrificing my relationship with Liz. The misery in Max's face was so extreme that Isabel felt her own eyes filling with tears. Maybe she'd been too hard on him. He had problems on a universal scale. Maybe she should just let go of the past. Maybe she should just let go of the past. Try to trust Max again. The phone rang. Isabel froze. It was Jessie. It had to be. Max grabbed the cordless phone from the coffee table and clicked it on. Hello? She watched his face as he listened to the voice on the other end. Max's eyes sought out Isabel's, and he frowned. Just a minute. He raised the phone, then he held it out to Isabel, his eyebrows raised questioningly. Isabel looked at Max's eyes, but she couldn't read his expression. Do you suspect a relationship with Jessie? How would he react when he found out? Max had always been compulsive about keeping their secret. He didn't want anyone else to get close enough to him, Michael, or Isabel to find out that they were aliens. Too many people knew already. What would he do if he thought Isabel's new romance was putting them all in danger? Isabel knew the answer to that. He would make her end it. She couldn't let Max discover her feelings for Jessie. She couldn't trust Max. She took the phone from him. Hello? Hey, beautiful. Jessie's warm, loving voice filled her ears. How's my girl? Her eyes still on Max. Isabel took a deep breath. I'm not interested, she said. Then she hung up on her boyfriend before he could say another word. Max was watching her with a frown. Who was that? He said. A telemarketer. Isabel lied. Nobody important. Bye, Mom, Maria called as she bustled through the kitchen of the DeLuca house. She wore a long, loose skirt and a spaghetti-strap tank top as she was pulling her hair into a ponytail as she went. We'll be back around 10. Sadie could hear pretty well from her hiding spot in the bushes outside the DeLuca house. She managed to duck beneath the window just as Maria passed by inside. The bush she was hiding in had a few thorns, but nothing she couldn't handle. The only thing that mattered was that she get to watch Maria. She began to gather things together so that she could follow Maria when she left the house. Maria! Amy DeLuca's voice called from inside. Where are you going? Sadie slowly peered over the edge of the window again. Maria now stood near the front door, looking exasperated. Amy faced her from the other side of the kitchen. I'm meeting Michael, Maria said. We're going to the movies. From 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 at night? Amy demanded. Maria rolled her eyes. What's the Inquisition? She asked. Sadie grinned. What's the Inquisition? She whispered. She loved the way Maria talked, always so sure of herself. I have to go to Hondo for the afternoon flea market, Amy was saying. I want you to come with me and man the booth today. Maria's mouth dropped open in astonishment. Excuse me, she said. It's my one day off from the crash down. That's the point, Amy replied. You have time to help me today. She tossed Maria a glow-in-the-dark alien puppet. I just got a whole shipment in, so it will be a busy day, and I can't handle it alone. Maria held the puppet up by its webbed foot. Look, sewing this alien crap is your thing, not mine, she told her mother. I have a job, and today's my vacation day, so that means I get to spend it doing what I want to do. Sadie's legs were getting tired from squatting underneath the windowsill. This argument seemed like it might go on for a while, so she slid down the wall of the house until she was sitting directly under the window. This way she could still hear every word Maria said, and she could add to her logbook at the same time. This alien crap is what puts food on the table, young lady, Amy cried. Sadie tuned her out for a moment while she flipped to a fresh page in notebook on her lap. She took a pencil from her backpack and began drawing a picture of Maria, quickly filling in the details. The pattern on the skirt she was wearing, the way Maria's ponytail sat up high up on her head. This is a family business, and you're part of the family, Amy was saying. You call this a family? Maria replied. There are two of us, you and me. You sell alien stuff at flea markets. I work at the crash down. That's it. We have no family business. We barely have a family. Sadie flipped to another blank page and began to write. Mom sells alien toys and stuff. She scribbled quickly. Maria doesn't like to help. Enough of Michael. Amy's voice broke Sadie's concentration. Was Michael Maria's boyfriend? Sadie got up and peered through the window again. Maria was standing with her hand on the doorknob, ready to leave the house. No, Mom, I haven't seen enough of Michael, Maria was saying. I like to see him as much as I can. You might not remember this, but when you have a boyfriend, you actually like to hang out with him. She turned and pulled the door open so quickly that Sadie barely had time to duck out of sight and behind the bushes. Maria stopped down the driveway and opened the door of her car. There's more to life than Michael Guerin, you know, Amy shouted after her. Maria didn't answer. She climbed into the car and peeled out. Sadie sighed. So much for trying to follow Maria. She looked back down at the notebook in her lap and wrote some more. Maria drives a reddish Volkswagen. Her boyfriend's name is Michael Guerin. That would do for now. Sadie closed the notebook and stared at the cover for a moment. Carefully glued to the front of the book was a large glossy school picture, a picture of Maria. Soon I'll know everything about you, Sadie whispered to the picture. Everything.
Chapter 3. Maris sat behind her huge cherry wood desk, poring over her file on the healer. She had a photograph from the incident at the hospital in Phoenix last December. The healer had cured an entire cancer ward full of children, and there was a security photo of a teenage boy with long hair. The FBI special unit from whom Maris had brought this file had thought this boy was the healer, but Maris wasn't so sure. It's worth investigating, I guess, she murmured, writing a note to herself to have a private investigator find out who the guy in the photo was. Dr. Sosa's thin, reedy voice interrupted her thoughts. You told me to report at the end of the day. Without looking up, Maria said, Come in and shut the door. Maris said, Come in and shut the door. Alan entered her office and closed the thick metal door behind him. Liz Parker left about 10 minutes ago, he said. And Maris asked, Did you give her the serum? Alan snorted. Of course not. I had to have some control samples. Like what? Maris asked. I have the old samples of the healer's cells, and now I have samples of Liz Parker's. I managed to get a piece of her hair without her noticing. I'm bored by this, Alan, Maris said. If you want me to track the changes in her after I gave her the serum, we need to have a baseline sample from before she has the serum, Alan said petulantly. And besides, I found out something very interesting. What? Her DNA is odd. Maris frowned. Odd how? It has some similarities with the DNA from the healer cells. Maris sat back in her chair. That is interesting, she said. Are you suggesting that when he heals, he actually changes the structure of the patient's DNA? It would appear so, Alan said. So if he heals my husband, he'll be returning Clayton into some sort of superhuman, Maris said, more to herself than him. No, not at all, Alan corrected her. Liz Parker isn't superhuman. She's simply different. There's no reason to think the mutated DNA has any effect on our daily life. It may just be a tag left behind by the healing process. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose. Oh, please, Alan, Maris snorted. You scientists can't figure out the purpose of most of our genetic material. Don't pretend you know what this DNA does. Ellen sat down in one of her guest chairs without even asking. I think we need to reconsider using Liz to test the serum, he said. Maris stared at him with contempt. No, Maris, Miss Wheeler. Liz already has comprised DNA. We won't be able to tell how the serum works on a regular person. A person who's never been healed by the healer. She isn't a good test subject. Didn't you just say that you think the mutated DNA has no effect on her? Maris asked. Ellen looked confused. Got him, Maris thought with satisfaction. She could always tell when Dr. Soso was trying to worm his way out of doing something unpleasant. Be sure to give Liz the serum tomorrow, Maris interrupted him. Now get out of my office. Kyle opened the front door and walked wearily inside. He tossed the keys onto the table beside the door and wiped his sweaty palms in the dark blue jumpsuit that was his uniform in Toby's garage. Then he wrinkled his nose. He'd been underneath the car for the last 3 hours, but the air in the house he shared with his father was even harder to breathe than exhaust fumes. Geez, Dad, open some windows, he cried, fanning his face. Sorry, son, Jim Valenti called from the seat on the couch. I guess we should clean up in here one of these days. Valenti took a swig of his Coke and continued watching TV. Yeah, maybe next time I have an hour off, Kyle muttered as he forced open the living room window. Two men, their dirty clothes, and lots of leftover takeout would create quite a stench. How was your day? Valenti asked. It sucked, Kyle replied. How about you? What did you do today? Valenti yawned. Oh, a little bit of this, a little of that. Translation? Nothing at all, Kyle thought. He tried not to be angry at his dad. After all, it wasn't Valenti's fault he lost the job. He'd been trying to help the aliens the same way Kyle always tried to help them. He owed Max Evans his life, and Isabel turned into one of his closest friends. Hell, even Michael had his moments. So if the interplanetary gang needed help, the Valentis were there. Too bad it usually wreaked such havoc on their lives. Kyle knew his father would snap out of this depression eventually and find a new job. But he'd been a police officer all his life, like his own father before him. Without his badge, Valenti didn't know what to do with himself. Kyle opened the fridge and let the cool air wash over his hot skin. He took a cleansing breath and tried to remember his Buddhist teachings. He let the anger drain slowly from his body. He loved his father, even if it was no longer bringing in a single cent. When the man becomes a child, the child must become a man, he murmured. They would be all right. His mechanic job covered the mortgage payments, and the new medichem job would buy some food. As long as his father got it together before Kyle had to go back to school in the fall, they'd be fine. Hey, close the fridge, Valenti called. You're wasting electricity. Kyle clenched his teeth. It's my electricity, he whispered. Still, he closed the fridge and turned towards his father. Package for you on the table, Valenti said. A messenger brought it by today. Kyle glanced at the bulky brown envelope. The label on it read Medichem. Must be my new uniform, Kyle said. I start at Medichem tomorrow. He ripped open the paper and pulled out a jumpsuit, just like the one he was wearing now, except the Medichem jumpsuit was dark green. Over the right pocket, his name is stitched, and over the left pocket, it said housekeeping. Just kill me now, Kyle said. Looks like you won't need any new clothes for a while, Valenti joked. Kyle narrowed his eyes and shot Valenti the nastiest look he had. Toss me a beer, would you, son? Valenti asked. What city, please? Said the voice on the other end of the phone. Roswell, Sadie replied. She was crammed into a tiny phone booth on Nelson Avenue, and the cars and trucks were whizzing by pretty quickly. Georgia? The operator asked. Sadie covered her other ear with her hand to block out the noise of the traffic. What? She yelled into the phone. Roswell, Georgia? The operator repeated. No, New Mexico, Sadie corrected her. Guerin. Michael Guerin. I need his address. No listing under that name, the operator said and promptly hung up. Sadie put the phone back in its cradle and tried not to get upset. This was the third phone booth she tried, and none of them had the phone books. She had to find the address of Michael's place because that's where Maria was going. How could she watch Maria if she couldn't even find her? Across the street, there was a gap. Sadie brightened, struck by an idea. She could go in there and get a tank top just like the one Maria was wearing today. That would make her feel better. She could dress just like Maria. She pulled her heavy backpack onto her shoulders, waited for a break in the traffic, and ran across. Right outside the store was another payphone. This one didn't have a whole booth, but it did have a Roswell phone book in the little cabinet underneath the phone. Yes, Sadie cried happily. She grabbed the book and plopped down on the sidewalk next to the payphone. Quickly, she turned to the G's. There was no Michael Guerin. He must be enlisted, Sadie muttered sadly. Who are you looking for? Someone asked. Sadie stared, glancing anxiously at the guy standing above her. She wasn't supposed Be in Roswell. If anyone turned her in, she'd be in huge trouble. I'm looking for my cousin, Michael, but I can't find him, she said, climbing to her feet. She hitched her backpack up so it was more secure on her shoulders, in case she had to run. What's his name? Asked the guy. Maybe I know him? Sadie thought about it. This guy was a teenager like Maria. Maybe he went to school with her and her boyfriend. Urine? The guy stared at her for a second. Uh-oh, Sadie thought. He knows I'm lying. She took a step backward. Michael's your cousin? The guy asked, frowning. I thought he was like a total orphan. I mean, with no family at all. So you know him? Sadie asked eagerly. Sure, he was in my auto shop class last year. Well, when he bothered to show. The guy took the phone book and flipped it open to the G's. Here, he said, pointing. Sadie followed his finger. Michael Guerin. She'd been spelling it wrong. It was a tiny little mistake, but suddenly she felt overwhelmed. What was she doing here in a place she'd never been, looking for a teenage guy she'd never heard of before yesterday? It hadn't even occurred to her to check all the spellings. She must be an idiot. Sadie's heart began to pound, and she felt panicky. She was in way over her head. She had to go home. Are you okay, kid? The guy asked. You look really pale. Sadie tried to focus on him. She looked pale? I'm not his cousin, she blurted out. I'm really looking for his girlfriend. She's supposed to be there. Just thinking of Maria calmed her down. That's why she was here, for Maria. She had nothing to worry about. She would find Maria. The guy shrugged. Whatever, he said. He wandered off down the sidewalk. Sadie waited until he was at the corner. Then she looked down at the concrete and pulled out her notebook. Michael Guerin, she wrote, 1701 East 3rd Street. She reached into her backpack again and pulled out a well-worn map. She opened it up and spread it on the sidewalk in front of her. It was a street map of Roswell, and she knew it almost by heart. She had no trouble finding Michael's address, and she wrote in big letters on the map, Michael's house. She already had Maria's house in the Crash Down Cafe written in. Her confidence restored, Sadie folded up the map, stuck it in her backpack, and went into the Gap to buy a tank top, just like Maria's. Jessie, Isabel waved her arms, trying to get her boyfriend's attention across the crowded lawn. Summerhaven Park always filled up at lunchtime. All the business people from the nearby firms liked to eat outside when the weather was nice. Jessie, she called again, more quietly this time. The office where Jessie and her father worked was only a few blocks away. It was entirely possible that her dad was in the park somewhere too. She was taking a big risk looking for Jessie in such a public place, but she had to see him. She had to explain what she hung up on him the day before. Jessie finally noticed her and headed across the grass to where she'd set up her blanket. She found a spot as out of the way as possible. Hey, he said, sitting next to her on the blanket. What are you doing here? His voice was cold, and he didn't smile. Isabel felt terrible. I had to see you, she said in a rush. I'm so sorry I hung up on you, Jessie. I just didn't know what else to do. My brother was there, and I could tell he was suspicious. I panicked. Jessie relaxed a little. I know, I figured it out, he said. I knew you'd understand. Isabel reached for his hand, but Jessie pulled away. What's wrong? She asked. He gazed out over the crowded lawn, refusing to meet her eye. It got me thinking. What did? You lying to your brother about me. Why don't you tell him the truth? Isabel didn't know what to say. We talked about this, Jessie, she started. We talked about keeping it from your parents, Jessie interrupted, because I work for your father. But you and your brother are supposed to be close. So why can't you tell him how you feel about me? Because he's an alien king and he thinks I'm supposed to obey everything he says, she thought. It's complicated, she said aloud. Too complicated, Jessie agreed. Alarm bells went off in Isabel's head. What do you mean? For the first time, Jessie turned to face her. You don't want to tell your brother because you think he won't approve, he said. Isabel opened her mouth, but no words came out. He was right. That's what got me thinking, Jessie went on. Your brother wouldn't approve. Your friends wouldn't approve, and your brother would fire me. Because I'm too old for you, Isabel. I'm out of college. I'm out of law school, and you're not even a freshman yet. But I don't care about that, she cried. Why should it matter how old you are? It's just a number. Jessie took her hand now. Honey, it's not just a number, he said gently. It's experience. It's years of learning how this world works. I just know more than you do. I can't explain it. There's so much that you haven't done, that you haven't seen yet. Isabel stared at him dumbfounded. She had done and seen more than he could imagine. He wouldn't even believe most of the things she'd seen. She couldn't tell him that. She couldn't risk him finding out her secret. You're young, and you should be able to act young, Jessie went on. You deserve to have a boyfriend you don't have to lie about. Isabel pulled her hand away. I can handle it, she said shortly. Her whole life is a lie. Why should her love life be any different? Jessie shook his head. I know this sounds condescending, he said, but I don't think you can handle it. I don't even think I can handle it. Isabel kept her eyes on the picnic basket she'd packed with such care. Are you breaking up with me? She whispered. There was a long pause. Finally, Isabel couldn't stand it. She raised her eyes to Jessie's distraught face. Yes, he said. Score, Michael yelled. I am the greatest. He began his ridiculous victory dance around the foosball table, making his stomach ripple as he shuffled his feet. Maria shook her head. Michael would never do this dance in front of anyone else. In a way, it proved what a deep intimacy he shared with her, and in another way, it proved what a total loser he was. It doesn't count if you're controlling both teams, Maria pointed out. Michael stopped mid-ripple. If you would just play with me, it wouldn't have to be both teams. Foosball's stupid. You only think that because you suck at it, Michael said. He half-heartedly continued his dance. Maria returned to reading the Rolling Stone that lay open on her lap. I could coach you, Michael offered. No thanks. I'll let you win the first game. How sweet, Maria said dryly, keeping her attention on the magazine. Michael suddenly leapt across the room, planting himself right in front of Maria's face as she lounged on his filthy couch. He snatched the magazine away from her. Hey, she yelped, I was reading that. He began his dancing again, holding up his t-shirt to show off his bare stomach as he sucked it in and out. You know you want to play with me, baby, he cried. You can't resist me. Marie stared at him open-mouthed. He looked like an idiot. She started to laugh. Michael grinned back at her, then flopped down on the couch and took her in his arms. Told you couldn't resist me, he said, kissing her. It was true. As much as he drove her nuts, Maria couldn't stay away from Michael for long. Even on those days when she couldn't think of a single thing that was attractive about him, all she had to do was look in his eyes and she was a goner. I thought we were going to do something today, she said against his mouth. We are doing something, he murmured, slowly moving his hand down her side. Something outside, she said. This is better. Maria closed her eyes and kissed him some more. She could do this forever, just lie in Michael's arms and forget about everything else. No, she said abruptly, pushing him off her. You said we could go out. Michael ran his hand through his yellow hair. It's a figure of speech, he said, his voice frustrated. Maria jumped up from the couch and began to pace around his small apartment. I'm sick of hanging around here all the time, Michael, she complained. Other people go to movies or go bowling or whatever. I blew off my mother today when she needed my help. I thought we had plans. She glanced out the small window in his living room and stopped in surprise. Fine, Michael sighed. What do you want to do? But Maria barely heard him. She stepped closer to the window and peered outside. There was that kid from the crash down, that strange little girl. She was sitting on the hood of a car parked across the street from Michael's building, just sitting there, writing in a notebook. Suddenly the girl glanced up, right at Maria. Maria gasped and leapt aside, out of sight window. There's someone out there, she hissed. Michael was instantly on alert. Where? He asked, rushing to Maria's side. Across the street. He eased himself up to the side of the window and peered around the edge. Maria chewed on her lip, worried. Who was this kid, and what was she doing here? Seeing her at the crash down was one thing, but why would she be in Michael's neighborhood? Why would she be watching Michael's apartment? Was she some kind of alien hunter? Or one of the skins who had somehow survived Tessa's firestorm? It's a little girl, Michael said dubiously. Uh-huh. Maria took some calming breaths. They had managed to handle every alien threat so far. They would get through this one, too. Michael stepped out in front of the window. What are you doing? Maria shrieked. She'll see you. Michael pushed it open the window. Hey, kid, scram! He yelled. Maria couldn't believe it. She pushed him aside and stared through the window. The girl hastily threw her notebook into a backpack and jumped off the car. She ran off down the road. She's not a stray dog, Michael, Maria snapped. For all you know, she's going to get reinforcements. He rolled his eyes. Think about it. Did she look dangerous? Maria pictured the little girl, her hair in a ponytail, dressed in a skirt and a really cute tank top. A really familiar tank top, come to think of it. I think she had the same shirt as me, Maria said. Michael frowned. Then maybe she is dangerous. For a moment, Maria gave him the meanest glare. Then she pounced on him. Really, she never could resist him. 230 to 100 by 15 millimeter Petri dishes, Liz said into the mini tape recorder Dr. Sosa had given her. And for the record, no scholarship is worth this. Liz hit play, listened to her last remark, and then erased it from the tape. She put the newly counted carton full of Petri dishes onto a shelf labeled Petri dishes. She'd never been so bored in her life, but Dr. Sosa had left for a meeting about an hour before, leaving Liz to take inventory of everything in the lab. He said he wanted to make sure he'd accounted for every piece of equipment in the move, but Liz thought he really wanted to drive her crazy. Maybe he was trying to get her to quit. Her stubborn nature arose the thought. She wasn't going to quit, no matter what kinds of menial labor he gave her. This job was an important stepping stone to her future, and she would stick it out. I work in a famous cancer research lab, she said out loud. That made her feel better. Maybe this was what lab assistants did. Count and label and organize. She'd done a lot of actual research on her own, working on all sorts of alien-related chemistry, but Dr. Sosa didn't know that. He thought she was just a typical high school student, and that's how he was treating her. She would simply have to prove him wrong. Liz picked up the box cutter and opened another carton of Petri dishes, this time the 35 by 10 millimeter ones. She ran her finger slowly over a stack of dishes, counting. She lost count by the time she got to 10. I need a break, she decided. She made her way out of the supply closet where she'd been working and wandered back into the main lab. It was deserted. Dr. Sosa didn't seem to have any research assistants except her. Liz didn't know what to make of it. A world-famous doctor, a brand-new lab, groundbreaking research. There should be about 30 people working around the clock on this project, but she met no one other than Dr. Sosa. Liz stretched her arms in the air, trying to ease the stiffness from squatting all day, counting things. She glanced around the lab, reveling in the neat chrome countertops, the high-powered microscopes, and the centrifuges. She loved laboratories, the way everything was in order, everything was under control. This was her natural environment. She was sure of it. All her life, she felt most comfortable in a lab. Until Max. With Max, nothing was under control, least of all her feelings. She simply melted whenever he was near her, as if he were my destiny, she thought. Too bad I wasn't his. Liz shook off the bitterness. Tess was Max's destiny. Liz had known that for more than a year now. Max hadn't asked for it. It wasn't his fault Tess had turned out bad. It wasn't even his fault that he slept with Tess. Well, not entirely. After all, on their home planet, she was his wife. None of that helped. The pain was still there. Liz still felt betrayed by Max. How could he have made love to anyone other than her? I've got to focus on something else, she thought. I'm here at Medichem, and there's only me. No aliens. Nothing to worry about. Her gaze fell on Dr. Sosa's workstation. He put everything away before leaving Liz alone, but she'd seen where the most recent samples were kept. Maybe she could take a peek at some of the mutated cells he was working with. It wouldn't do any harm. These were just basic samples. The important materials were kept under lock in a small chamber at the back of the room. Liz pulled open a long, flat drawer of Dr. Sosa's workstation. Inside were several small boxes of slides. One box was labeled Patient X and dated yesterday. Liz opened the box and removed one of the slides inside. Okay, Patient X, let's see your cancer cells, she whispered, putting the slide under the microscope. She leaned in, brought the slide into focus, and saw large, five-sided cells, green cells. Liz's mind flew back to that day 2 years earlier when she first learned the truth about Max's alien nature. She'd swiped some cells from his cheek and looked at them under the microscope in the high school lab. His cells hadn't looked like hers. They hadn't looked human. They were large and shaped like little pentagons. They were green. They were the same as these cells. Liz's head spun. These cells here in Dr. Sosa's lab. These cells weren't human. Did Medichem know about the aliens?
Chapter 4. Kyle sloshed the mop around in the pail of semi-sudsy water. With a yawn, he lifted the mop out and splashed it down onto the already spotless floor of Medichem's hallways. He mopped about 7 identical halls since he started his shift. His basic plan was to work his way down to the employee kitchen, where he could finish his night by raiding the fridge. Working for the man, he snagged in the falsetto voice, "Yes, I am working." Kyle, a voice broke into his wail. Kyle, mortified, spun toward the doorway behind him. He was shocked to see Liz standing there. "What the hell?" he cried. "It's midnight. I thought I was alone." "I need your help," Liz said, "and I already know you can't sing." "Okay then," Kyle replied. "What's up?" He glanced around suspiciously. "Do you think there are security cameras?" she asked. Kyle sighed and stuck the mop back into the bucket. "So it's that kind of problem, huh?" "What do you mean?" Liz asked. "I mean, it's dropped everything and risk getting arrested to save the aliens kind of problem," Kyle explained. Liz nodded, biting her lower lip. "Sorry," she muttered. "No problemo," Kyle assured her. "Let's go talk in the kitchen. If there are cameras, it will just look like we're stealing food." He led the way down the hall. "Why are you here so late anyway?" "Because I needed to see you." Liz and I told the security guard that I'd forgotten something in the lab, so I don't have much time. I'm sure eventually he'll come back and check up on me if I'm gone too long. Kyle pushed open the door of the employee kitchen. He gestured for Liz to take a seat in the small formica chair. Then he opened the refrigerator and peered inside. "So what is it?" he asked. "I was snooping around in Dr. Sosa's lab." Kyle rolled his eyes and reached for an apple someone had left in the fridge. Don't you run into enough trouble without going around looking for it? I didn't think I would cause trouble, Liz protested. He was he has me doing such boring stuff. I just wanted to get a look at what he's actually working on. Real scientific research material, not just stacks of inventory. Whatever, Kyle said. What did you find? Alien cells, Liz whispered. In his cancer cell slides. No way, Kyle whispered back. Are you sure? I've seen way too many alien cells in my life, Liz pointed out. I know what they look like. Fair enough. But what are they doing here? Do you think that Metacam knows about our aliens? Liz shrugged. They were labeled Patient X. I thought maybe Dr. Sosa had stumbled across a cancer patient who turned out to be an alien. Kyle thought about it. The aliens they knew of were so-called Royal Four, Nasato, who was dead, and the Skins, who were also dead. Was there another one? I don't think I can take another new alien, he murmured. What if it turns out to be like Tess? Liz fixed him with a harsh stare. You mean an evil, murdering bitch? Cal looked down at the table. I wish I could think of her that way, he said, but it's not that simple. She killed Alex. It is that simple, Liz said. Not to me, Cal exploded. None of you ever even think of how it was for me, do you? I trusted her. She was like a sister to me, and she lived in my house, and she totally betrayed me. I'm so sorry, Liz said quickly. I didn't mean. No, Cal cut her off. I don't want to hear it. Everyone just takes it for granted. And my dad and I are on the board with the whole alien thrill ride, but none of you ever think about what it costs us, Kyle. We took her in. We loved her. She became like family to us. And then she used her powers on me without even asking. She made me she made me carry Alex's body. Kyle tried to swallow the painful lump in his throat. He tried not to think about Alex. Even now, he never felt sure which memory to trust, the one Tess had planted in his brain, or the one he knew was real. Tess had mind warped him into thinking he was carrying a duffel bag out of the car, but really, he'd been lugging the dead body of his friend. How could he ever forgive her for making him do such an awful thing? Liz reached across the table and took his hand. Kyle said softly. He focused on the warmth of his fingers entwined with his. He was so angry at Tess that he could taste it, but he shouldn't take it out on Liz. He blinked back bitter tears and looked up at Liz. He was surprised to see tears in her eyes as well. I'm sorry, Kyle, she said. I've spent so much time thinking of how Tess ruined everything for me. I've never realized how much she hurt you, but I should have. I've been a terrible friend to you. Kyle squeezed her hand. Nah, he said, trying for a jokey tone. You got screwed over too. You have every right to think about yourself. Liz gave him a small smile. I was trying to forget about all the alien stuff, she told him. I was going to devote all my energy to Metacam. But all you found was more alien stuff, Kyle said. Typical. Yeah, Liz pushed back her chair and stood. We'd better get going before the security guard comes looking for me. Kyle stood and followed her back out the hallway. Where are you going? To break into Dr. Sosa's lab? Daddy, look at me, the little boy spun in a circle, his dark hair flying. I'm I'm spinning. Max watched him, hurling, able to breathe through the intense love he felt. It was his son, his baby right here in the Evanston's front yard. The boy spun faster and faster. his features becoming a blur, his hair whipping about so widely that Max couldn't follow it with his eyes. Daddy, the voice must have come from the little boy, but Max heard it inside his head, as if his son was speaking directly into Max's mind. I've come home, Daddy. I'm right here on Earth. Max reached for his son, wanting to hold him in his arms, but the boy was still spinning impossibly fast. He was like a little tornado kicking up grass and dirt in his wake. That isn't normal, Max thought. Someone will see him. They'll figure out what he is. They'll take him away. Max sat back on his heels, devastated. This had never occurred to him before. How was he going to protect his son from humans? It was hard enough being a grown-up alien like he, Isabel and Michael, but his son was just a baby. He wouldn't be able to control his powers. He wouldn't even understand why he should control them. I'll take him away, Max thought frantically. Now that he's back on Earth, I'll hide him. I won't let anyone see him until he's old enough to understand what he is. A freak test set. Max had snapped. His son was gone. Instead, Tess stood there. His beautiful face was the same as ever, but her eyes were the eyes of a reptile. Is that what you're going to teach him, Max? That he's some kind of freak who should hide his powers? Do you want him to grow up skulking around like you do, too afraid of his own shadow to take any action at all? What kind of action am I supposed to take? Max demanded. Should I kill someone like you killed Alex? You're the king, Tess said. You should have come back to Antar to save the planet. That was your destiny. Instead, you've abandoned your people the way you abandoned our son. By the time she finished talking, her features had melted back into those of a toddler. Max stared at his son's waves of love coursing through his body. I didn't abandon you, Max whispered. You wouldn't you would have died if you stayed on Earth. I didn't know what else to do, so I let Tess leave with you. His son stared back at him with the eyes of a reptile. Max shot up in his bed, beads of sweat covering his forehead. He glanced frantically around the room. Where was his son? Was Tess here? His breath came in gasps. Slowly his eyes adjusted to the darkened room and his breathing returned to normal. Just a dream, he whispered. You'd think I'd be used to it by now, he thought. He dreamed of his son every night since he had the vision of the baby being born, the vision that had ruined his date with Liz, and maybe ruined any chance of making things right with her. His gaze strayed to the clock on the bedside table. It was after midnight. Liz was probably already asleep. He hadn't seen her in 2 days. She was too busy with her new job, but he needed to see her tonight, even if it was just to look through her window and watch her sleep for a few minutes. Max threw back the sheet and climbed out the bed. He would go see Liz. That would make everything better. Get down, Liz whispered. Kyle ducked just in time to avoid being seen by the uniformed security guard crossing the hall in front of them. He and Liz were now hidden behind a waist-high cart filled with some sort of scientific machinery. Kyle gestured to the cart. Torture devices, he asked. Lasers used for precision dissection of cancerous tissues, Liz replied. Kyle shook his head. Parker, you are a science nerd, he told her. But you're a gifted science nerd. How do you know that the guard was coming? I think I developed a sixth sense of danger, Liz said wearily. Call it a silver lining of having an alien boyfriend. Boyfriend, he teased her. But Liz didn't smile. She didn't even roll her eyes. I don't know, she murmured. Is the security guy gone? Don't change the subject, Kyle said. I want to hear the dirt on you and Maximus Alienus. Kyle, this is hardly the time for gossip, Liz snapped. Ouch. He had obviously hit a sore spot. Liz and Max were always on the end, on and off. As far as he could tell, he didn't know why they felt the need to break up all the time. But since Michael and Maria did the same thing, he figured it was some alien machismo issue. Luckily, since he had found Buddha, he was beyond such things. If he was to date someone, even an alien, like say Isabel, he would stick he would stick to it and not create such drama all the time. Earth to cow, Liz was saying. You know that phrase has new meaning to me since meeting the pod squad, he commenced. He snuck a peek over the top of the cart. All clear. Liz moved out from behind the cart and tiptoed up to the hallway. Kyle followed her, hoping there really weren't any cameras everywhere. If someone saw this little escapade, he'd be out of a job. This one, Liz said, stopping in front of the plain metal door. Kyle pulled out his housekeeping passkey and inserted it into the lock. The door swung open and they hurried inside. You're a lifesaver, Liz told him. Yeah, who knew being a janitor would come in handy like this? He glanced around the darkened room, a lab just like the labs at school. He would never understand how Liz could love these places. This made him think of mad scientists and chemistry pop quizzes. I looked through all the slides at Dr. Sosa's workstation. They're all standard cancer cells except the one slide I saw before. Liz um, started through the lab, weaving around tables and large machines. So what are you doing here? Kyle asked, following her. Dr. Sosa keeps all the sensitive material in back room, Liz explained. He says it's because of corporate spying. Huh, Kyle could think of nothing else to say. They're working on a cure for cancer. Every other pharmaceutical company on Earth would like to steal their research and come up with the cure first, Liz explained. Kyle hesitated. You don't really think that Dr. Sosa is going to find a cure for cancer, he said. I mean, is that even possible? I don't know, Liz said. But if they found an alien they think is a cancer patient, it will definitely lead them down the wrong road, research wise. We need to stop them before they realize what they're actually studying. Not cancer, just extraterrestrials, Carl agreed. And that is research even the government would want to steal. Exactly, Liz stopped in front of another chrome door. This is where he keeps all his sensitive material. Can you unlock it? Kyle pulled out his handy passkey. Of course. Even secret laboratory closets need mopping, right? He stuck the key card in the slot over the doorknob and waited for the beep. Nothing. Kyle turned the key around and stuck it into the door slot again. Still nothing. What's wrong, Liz said. I don't know. Kyle tried sticking it upside down. Nothing. It's not working. He looked up at Liz. Frustrated face. I'm sorry, he said. I think you need Max for this. Liz gave a deep sigh and sank down onto the floor. Kyle, surprised, sat next to her. What's up? It's Max, Liz admitted. I don't want to get him involved. Oh, Liz. If this is about aliens, Max is involved whether you like it or not. You can't always protect him, you know. It's not that, Liz said. I just don't want to see him. Kyle was stunned. Liz and Max were soulmates. It was clear to everyone who knew something huge had happened. You don't want to see him ever again? Liz shrugged. I just want to figure out how I feel before I talk to Max. I need to know what I want for myself, my future, as soon as I start talking to Max. It all gets blurry. You're only 18. Why do you need to know what you want for your future? What you want your future to be? Kyle asked. Because Max knows his future. He knows his son is out there somewhere and he has to find him. She leaned her head on Kyle's shoulder. It's like he just grew up about 10 years faster than me. He has a child, Kyle. I know. If I'm ready for that. Kyle nodded. That's a tough one. He didn't know what else to say, but he had a feeling Liz just wanted a friend. Right now, he slipped his arm around her shoulder. Well, We'll figure out a way to do this without Max for now, he said. I'll get Michael to come with me tomorrow and open the lock, or Isabel. Liz smiled. Thanks, Kyle. Suddenly, a bright light shone in their faces. What's going on? A deep voice demanded. Kyle was struck dumb with fear. This was it, the moment he had been expecting ever since he'd found out about aliens. This guy would turn them over to the police, or worse, maybe he would bring them to the special unit of the government and they would do experiments on him because he interacted with aliens. He'd even been brought back to life by an alien. What are you housekeeping? The voice boomed. That didn't sound like a threat. Yeah, Kyle said. My friend here works in the lab, and you kids should fool around on your own time, the security guard said. He turned the flashlight away from their eyes, and now Kyle could see that the guy was barely older than they were. Why don't you go make out in your car instead of in here? He walked back out into the hallway. Liz shot Kyle a relieved smile, then got up and followed the guard. I'll never get used to this cloak and dagger stuff, Kyle muttered as he pulled the door closed behind him. Max paced up and down on Liz's rooftop. Where was she? It was after 1 in the morning and Liz was not in her bed. She wasn't downstairs in the crash down either. He decided to check out Maria's house. Liz could be sleeping over there. As he turned to go, he heard a car pull to a stop down in the alley. Max crept up to the edge of the roof and peered over. Below him was Kyle's pickup. Liz sat in the passenger seat, earnestly talking to Kyle. Why are they out together in the middle of the night? Max thought. He liked Kyle, but ever so often the old jealousy reappeared. Liz kissed Kyle on the cheek and climbed out the pickup. Max backed away from the edge of the roof and sat down next to the window and led led to Liz's bedroom. She would she would be up any minute. He leaned back against the brick wall and stared into the sky. His son was up there somewhere. Tess was there on a planet he'd never seen, but that he was supposed to save. It didn't seem fair sometimes. He couldn't remember being a king before Tess. He couldn't remember Antar at all. There would be vague visions occasionally, but concrete memories and how he didn't trust the things that Tess had helped him remember with her mind warp horrors. She could have planted things in his mind, whether they really happened or not. But the baby was real, he knew that. He had connected with his son while he was still in Tessa's womb. And then there was that vision last week. What are you doing here, Max? Liz had come up to the window without his even hearing her. He jumped to his feet. Hey, I was worried about you. Why were you out so late? Did that sound overbearing? Max wondered. Did I sound like some possessive idiot? I'm not even officially her boyfriend. Do I have the right to ask questions like that? If he was any judge of Liz's reaction, she was thinking the same thing. I was at Metacamp, Liz said. I saw Cal drop you off, Max added instantly. He wished she hadn't said it. Now he sounded like a jealous, possessive idiot. Liz raised her eyebrows. Just how long have you been up here? She asked. Max could feel his face getting hot. Only a few minutes, he lied. He'd been there for at least half an hour. I was just climbing up the ladder when I saw Kyle pull up. Liz studied him. He wondered if she knew he was lying. So why were you with Kyle? He asked, doing his best to sound curious but not jealous. It didn't really work. It didn't really work because he works at Metacam too, Max remember? But why were you there so late? Max pressed. You're supposed to be home by 5. That was 8 hours ago. Liz averted her eyes. I forgot something in the lab, she said. So I wanted Kyle to use his passkey to let me in. Oh, Max said. That seemed like a perfectly reasonable explanation. Must have been something important to go back in the middle of the night, he commented. Yeah, was all Liz said. There was an uncomfortable silence. I had a dream, Max told her suddenly. It was more like a nightmare. I wanted to see you after. I thought if I could see you, I would feel better. Liz's beautiful brown eyes met his for an instant, filled with love and concern. Oh, Max, you poor thing, she murmured. What was the dream about? My son, he replied. He was on Earth, and all of a sudden I realized, you know what, Max? I'm actually kind of tired, Liz interrupted. Do you think this can wait? Max felt as if she slapped him. Here he was trying to share his story with her, and she didn't even want to hear him. Sure, he said shortly. It's not important. Okay, Liz said. I'll see you later. She gave him a brief smile and closed the window, shutting him out. Max turned slowly toward the ladder. I shouldn't have mentioned my son, he thought sadly. Liz doesn't want to hear about that part of my life. But he still had to find his son. No one, not even Liz, had as much claimed on Max's responsibility. Would Liz ever be able to live with that? And if not, will Max ever be able to live without Liz? The end of chapter 4. Oof, takes a lot to read.
I'm telling you, this one has problems because it's giving me problems already. Do you see the inconsistencies though? Because they don't act like that in season 3. He's all over her when they're like robbing the convenience store and they're like boyfriend and girlfriend, right? And in the book they're like, oh, well, we don't know if we love each other. I'm like, are you kidding me? That drives me nuts. I know that they're done different times by different people. I get that. But you think they would have at least watched that dang episode before they wrote it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah, it seems a little inconsistent.
Very inconsistency. Michael never calls Maria baby, ever. That drives me nuts.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
It's very weird. Okay. And we don't know who the little girl is yet. We will. I'm starting my video, sorry. But it's gonna, well, it's her sister, which you guys will find out in like next chapter. Well, we don't hear anything about her dad except for he left, any of that stuff. So we'll get bombarded with all that, and then they disappear. We don't have any of that in season 3. We don't have any of that in any of the other books. Nothing. That special unit don't come after them. I just think it's weird. Just weird.
Yeah.
It's like a filler. To me, it's like really inconsistent. I do like how we get more information about Medicaid, or however you say that, because we're just thrown into that too. But both Liz and Kyle work there, right? But in the show, they don't talk about that. No, neither one. When they go in there, like when everything happens and Isabel gets shot, everything, they don't act like they've been there before. That's what drives me nuts.
It was just Michael that was working there.
Right. And it was all about, like, they knew something funky was going on. He's the one who found out the guy was trying to do weird things. Like, we find out they have other alien cells. And we know that they were doing that because they do have the dress in the show. That's right. Because they got that dress from the FBI. That's shown in the show. They think that Michael is the healer, which is why they hire him.
Oh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch that.
But in the book, they think that Liz has something to do with it. Well, they knew that he was healed by healer. So she knows who Max is in the book, but in the show, they think it's Michael. See what I mean? Inconsistency drives me crazy. That's why it's my problem child.
Mm.
Some of this dialogue there's some good dialogue in here. Some of it. Some of the stuff that talk between Max and Liz, I can see that happening. But at the same time, what we see in season 3 is them all over each other. And then in here, she's like, nope, you don't care about me. You care about Tess and your son. It just doesn't flow right.
Match up. Yeah.
Drives me crazy. That's my problem with it.
Like, well, they talked about having that first date. And I'm like, but they were all over each other on that first date. So, like, why is she suddenly, like, pulling back? Like, oh, no, I don't think I want to be with you.
Right, and she took them out of the water, and she's all concerned about them. Like in the show, she's upset about it, but she tells Max, "If I had a kid out there, I would hope that you would help me. We are all in on this." That's why she helps him steal the diamond. That's why she helps him figure out what's going on when he goes to meet Lindley. All that stuff. She does all the research for him. Like in the book, she acts like she doesn't want to give a crap. She wants to be done with the alien stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Total inconsistencies. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's why it's my problem child.